There is a growing number of people who feel uneasy with the current crop of GOP candidates. Well, I'm not one of them because I think any one of them would be better than Obama. Joining us now is a columnist named Jack Hunter who gives his reasoning why some at the head of the pack might not be the right choice. Jack Hunter, welcome back to the Savage Nation.
Always good to be with you, Michael.
In your column, you say that the current frontrunners have an anti-conservative frame of mind. What do you mean?
Well, a lot of conservatives rightly are attacking what we see as the emerging frontrunner in the Republican presidential field now, Newt Gingrich. Conservatives are attacking him for his many liberal positions. Everything from funding to Planned Parenthood to support for gun control, amnesty, bank bailouts, No Child Left Behind, Medicare Plan D. We could go on and on all day. And a lot of conservatives are scrambling to defend Newt Gingrich. Where is all this coming from? Well, I make the argument in my latest piece at the Daily Caller entitled, Does Newt Gingrich Want the Constitution to Die?, that he has constantly had what I call an anti-conservative sort of mindset. And what do I mean by that? If you go back to traditional conservatism, Barry Goldwater, intellectuals like Russell Kirk, who's a hero of mine, they always talk about custom and habit, sort of the wisdom of our ancestors, looking back at the Founding Fathers, sort of custom and prescription, sort of these traditional hallmark conservative values. Newt Gingrich possesses none of that. He is a man who is open to any sort of whimsical fancy on the intellectual side of things, ready to revolutionize society at the drop of a hat. And a good example of that was his support for this sort of third wave thinking of Alvin and Heidi Koffler in the 1990s. A lot of people have written about his support of that. But let me just share with you Newt Gingrich's anti-conservative state of mind. This is a passage from a book. A lot of people know about this now, that Newt Gingrich wrote the foreword to in 1995. The book was called Creating a New Civilization, The Politics of the Third Wave by Alvin and Heidi Koffler. This is on page 91 of this book, and I quote, For this wisdom above all we thank Mr. Jefferson, who helped create the system that served us so well for so long and that now must, in its turn, die and be replaced. Now, Newt Gingrich had this to say about this book, that it's a key effort in the direction of empowering citizens and, quote, to truly take the leap to invent a new civilization. Now, if the Topplers are thanking Mr. Jefferson, we could assume they're talking about Thomas Jefferson, for the system he helped create, but now it should be replaced, that it should die. What are they talking about? Well, the system of government we have in the United States is this little experiment called the U.S. Constitution. That is what the Topplers want to replace. Newt Gingrich, in his foreword and elsewhere, in his praise for the Topplers' work, obviously thought that was a good idea. I can't think of anything, Michael, more anti-conservative than that sentiment. From Barry Goldwater through Ronald Reagan and for most of the existence of the American right, our job as conservatives has been to protect and to promote the United States Constitution. That is our legal and civilizational heritage, if you will. And for a guy like Gingrich to try to pass himself off as a conservative and to be against the Constitution, it's just mind-boggling that anybody would consider, conservatives especially, this guy one of our own.
Well, what do you think the guiding philosophies are?
Now, it's interesting that you asked that, Michael. What are Newt Gingrich's guiding philosophies? I dare say he has none. That is part of the problem. This guy's all over the place. Let's take a look at what former Congressman Mickey Edwards had to say about Newt Gingrich. This is a quote. Quote, I've known Newt for almost 30 years but I wouldn't be able to describe what his real principles are. Well, if you know somebody for 30 years and you're trying to figure out what their principles are and you can't figure out what they are, maybe they don't have any. When you look at Newt's record, his long liberal record, and we could rattle off the liberal policy offenses all day long, conservatives are now scratching their head and saying to themselves, where did this come from? Did it just happen to come into his head when he was sitting next to Nancy Pelosi in that commercial or traveling around via bus with Al Sharpton? No, they've always been there because he has no sort of constitutional conservatism in his set of principles. I dare say he has no set of principles. Actually, Yuval Levin at National Review made a similar observation to Congressman Edwards. This is Yuval Levin, quote, Gingrich exhibits the technocratic countenance of the Rockefeller Republican, a program for every problem. Conservative humility about human nature and about the potential of technical solutions is not readily discernible. I think it's a fair assessment of Mr. Gingrich, his mindset, that I call anti-conservative. That's not something that Jack Hunter just came out with out of the blue. Many observers, people have been paying attention to Newt Gingrich for a very long time. Senator Tom Coburn, across the board, do not recognize this guy as one of our own. He is not conservative now. He has never been a conservative. And in fact, Newt Gingrich's entire career has been to rationalize big government from a Republican perspective. I think that pretty much encapsulates it, and I'm sorry, to have that guy at the highest office, to be the President of the United States, is going to take us so many steps backwards as conservatives, as constitutionalists, and as Americans, quite frankly.
Well, what should happen from here, Jack?
Well, see, that's the great fear. Nobody wants to see Barack Obama in office another 4 years. But this is the problem, Michael. And a lot of conservatives sort of sense this. We don't know what to do. A lot of people are desperate right now because Obama's been so god-awful. Every time we settle for basically a Republican version of what the other side has to offer, as Newt Gingrich is through and through, we always get bigger government. I made the point in this election that, say a Mitt Romney or Newt Gingrich or any of the other people running for president were actually able to just level off what Obama has done in exploding government, much less step backwards, which is what we really need to get away from this debt, this massive spending and the size of government. Those Republican presidents, either any of them, will have accomplished what even Ronald Reagan couldn't accomplish, the best president of my lifetime. But at the end of his term, government got bigger. Does anybody believe the front runners in this right now in this GOP field can accomplish what Reagan couldn't? Now, I'm not saying that Barack Obama would be preferable, but I'm saying that conservatives make a big mistake when we settle. And we've done that in every election till the cows come home and government keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. If you think Newt Gingrich is going to take us away from that, there's two things you need to think about. There's absolutely nothing in his record that suggests as such. And also, him being arguably one of the worst people to represent the Republican Party heading into 2012, it is going to take the Tea Party, so much of what we've accomplished in the last 2 or 3 years of getting back to real traditional American conservatism, it's going to take us so far away from that in so many awful, dreadful ways.
Jack Hunter, thanks again for being on The Savage Nation.